Our guest today has donned many hats in her decade-long working experience. She holds a bachelor's in history from the Wellesley College and a master's in political research from London. She started working as a project associate at the Documentation Center of Cambodia, and today she heads Padmini VNA Mechatronics as the company's COO. Please allow me to welcome Viveka Bhandari. Viveka, it's wonderful to have you here with us today.
Thank you.
I wanted to understand, you started your working career with Ernst and Young as a research analyst, and today you're heading Padmini VNA Mechatronics as COO. How has been the experience? What have been the learnings throughout, and how are they helping you today?
So, I started my career, as you said, as an analyst at Ernst and Young in their government and public sector consulting division. And at that point, I definitely had no thoughts of, joining the automobile industry. But I do feel like the skill set I acquired as an analyst and then associate at Ernst and Young has stood me in good stead once I joined Padmini. But it's been a very different experience because I've gone from being on the advisory side to the much more hardcore operational side of a company. And that's basically essentially the difference between consulting and manufacturing. And the journey at Padmini has been interesting to say the least because I joined when I was 28, now I'm 32. I started within HR, then moved into marketing, then corporate communications, within which I set up the department. And I've always had a passion for sustainability. And at Padmini, we sort of weld sustainability with innovation. And as this green transition has started, with the concern over climate change, biodiversity loss, I've also channeled a lot of my efforts into setting up a sustainability department within Padmini. And now I think, as I've stepped now into the COO role in the last 6 months, it's sort of been a culmination of taking those analytical skills and project-based skills that I developed at E&Y and combining them with the operational, setting up departments, running departments experience that I got at Padmini. And I also think that it's been an interesting journey because, I joined Padmini, which was set up by my father. And it's interesting to be part of this journey of taking it from, a family-based business to a more professionally run business, which together with the JVs we've, over the last few years established, we can truly become a global player with a lot of the global best practices that I think a number of companies that have gone successfully from that transition of family business to professional can.
Perfect. You just mentioned innovation, right? The automobile industry, including the components industry, the whole ecosystem is going through a very big revolution, right? There's a major shift happening towards green fuels like electric, LNG, hydrogen, and a lot of other things, right? My question is, where do you see Padmini VNA Mechatronics in the present scheme of things?
So Padmini VNA Mechatronics has always had a focus on sustainability. And that was very much the founder's perspective. And back then, EV was still a far-fetched dream, in 2005 when Padmini VNA was set up. But he's always believed in marrying, sustainability with innovation. So a lot of our products have been focused on how to reduce emissions in the IC engine. Now, obviously, the transition away from IC engines has begun, or you can say the steps to clean up the IC engine even further. So as far as the cleaning up the IC engine, I would call it, is concerned, Padmini is very well placed because we're well diversified across segments. We do see, commercial vehicles being the last to electrify. And there, our technologies really come in and helping clean those segments up further and reducing emissions further. On the passenger vehicle and two-wheeler side, I find ourselves, Padmini well placed with our bets in thermal management and on the motor side. And I do think that, as far as hybrid goes, again, we have a portfolio that's well poised. And in my opinion, ethanol, CNG, those still use the very traditional IC technologies, but just with a twist, which again, we have been making for years. But all in all, it's an interesting transition that's going to take place. And for someone like me who's very passionate about sustainability, it's also very fulfilling to be part of it.
Speaking of transition, Viveka, which segments do you think would adopt or would transition to electric vehicles sooner than later, in comparison to other segments?
So definitely the two-wheeler and three-wheeler segment, we've already started seeing the electrification of that start. Of course, there are different statistics of 100% to 50% to 30%, and I'm not going to get into those details. But it is definitely the easiest to electrify because the technology is the simplest. After that, I definitely see passenger vehicles. Now, in a country like India, in my opinion, there are some impediments to the transition, and how we deal with those impediments will define how fast the transition takes place. And the chief amongst that is infrastructure. In order to have a mass adoption of EV, you have to have mass infrastructure. You also have to have in place the mechanisms of how to deal with the after effects of EV, like battery recycling. So, but that's, I think, a later, more 10-year problem. The immediate problem is the infrastructure and also the price, parity. There has to be a point at which it makes sense to a customer that is not only looking at it through a sustainability lens, right? For a number of people, for example, me, I have an EV, but I'm passionate about sustainability. I did the calculations and saw that there would be a break even, in a few years where it would make sense to buy it. But there has to be a price parity which it makes sense to the masses. And then we also have to address that issue of, if you look at it, in India, you have multiple small villages, multiple small remote areas. Now, how are you going to address the problem of infrastructure there? So I think once these aspects are thought through more, worked through, then you will see the transition speeding up. At this point, two-wheeler and three-wheeler remains the first that will transition, but these same impediments apply here as well. The last, in my opinion, will be heavy vehicles.
Perfect. This transition, right, is also leading to a mammoth number of challenges, and challenges are giving birth to opportunities. What would you say are the biggest challenges and opportunities for the auto sector right now?
So, in terms of challenges, in my opinion, is right now there's a challenge of deciding where to place your R&D spend, right? Based again over the uncertainty of how fast this transition will take place. Because, and at least as a supplier, that's sort of defined for us by our OEM, right? How fast you see the OEMs transitioning. In my opinion, at their level, again, there is that decision that has to be made. That do we invest more in EV? Do we invest more in IC? Do we balance it out? Because every R&D cycle is about 3 to 5 years. So, and now especially, you can say internationally with some of these IC combustion engine bans coming in, those decisions are having to be taken now or a year down the line. Another challenge as a supplier is that, in my opinion, you will see a consolidation of the industry happen because it still is up in the air. How much will OEMs take in-house? How much will they still get from suppliers? A lot of what is left for suppliers to supply to an electric vehicle is much simpler than a combustion engine vehicle. You've taken out the complexity of an engine, right? So it overall becomes easier, but it also means there are more commoditized parts available versus R&D opportunity parts. There, that might become a more cluttered space, or you might see more consolidation happen, acquisitions happen of smaller players. In terms of the opportunities, there's a lot of opportunity on the software side, on the electronics side, and at least for us, on the motors and the thermal management.
So, do you think these challenges and opportunities are also a knock on the door for women wanting to be a part of the industry?
So I definitely think that the transition is rebranding the auto industry as quote unquote a sexier industry to be in. It's sort of always been a more old school industry. I think now EV, because EV is more tech and you have software coming in. And there are more women engineers now who have, entered the software space. So there's definitely an opportunity for women to enter from that angle. On the mechanical and mechatronics side, I think there's always been an opportunity. I think there it's more system-based, changes that we made. Has to be the opportunity for women to be able to engage in mechanical and mechatronics at the college level. Personally, at Padmini, I saw, because as I said, my first year I was involved with HR, and I'm very passionate about there being more women at Padmini. And I saw myself as I set up certain mechanisms to, allow women to come, get insights into Padmini through women in engineering workshops that were held every quarter. The supply, aka the number of women actually, studying mechanical engineering mechatronics was much smaller than I thought. Then I think it's also up to a lot of companies to enable women to have their careers in the auto industry. And that does unfortunately come down to, enabling what I've seen a lot of consulting firms today do very successfully, is that allow those women, when it might not be the right word for it, but when they enter the periods like motherhood, etc., to still enable them to continue their careers. And I think the last is also manufacturing in India per se has been a very male-dominated industry. So it's also sensitizing these industries towards, working with women. Because that was, again, these are a lot of perspectives I've developed while trying to, enhance women hiring at Padmini. So this is my perspective also on the industry.
Perfect. But where do you think, or what segments of the automobile vertical do you think can women participate more in thanks to this evolution?
Definitely software and design.
Software design. Perfect. Big question. Are you content with the number of women presently participating in the industry?
No, I still think it's very low. As I said, previously, manufacturing overall is a very male-dominated industry. And while you are seeing the emergence of more and more women, at the top, or actually, women like Malika Srinivasan who started, their own companies, I still think that still has to permutate down into the bottom. Women should be able to enter auto companies. More of them should be enabled to rise to the top. As I said before, I think there also needs to be a change in the attitude of the industry overall towards being more women friendly. And that's not to say it's not happening. It's already, it is happening. But I still think there's a way that you can go. I myself, for 4 years, as I entered the industry and all, have felt at many points compared to my consulting years, and consulting itself is still quite male-dominated in India. There was still more discomfort or resistance to women in this sector.
What can the industry do to bring more women into the ecosystem, see participation of more females?
So I think, from what I understand, some companies have started it. You need to have, programs targeted at recruiting more women. Again, I'm comparing it to consulting firm. Consulting firms like McKinsey have done that very successfully, and that has helped them enhance their women hiring. So I think taking a page out of those practices. I think also identifying high potential women leaders early enough on in your companies is very pivotal, and then putting them to programs like leadership programs, but also enabling them to spend the years required in the company to rise up. Because the truth does remain that women will run into challenges of how do you balance your career with motherhood, and we've seen how the West and a lot of companies in India are now addressing this. So I think it needs to be a combination of these. I think there needs to also be this attitudinal shift, as I said, which I found very funny when I joined, which was that auto is a company that involves heavy machinery, so women can't do it, and these kind of thoughts have to change. And it might sound very silly to say this, but I've actually had these explanations given to me. So this thought process has to change. But I think this is more on the mechanical, mechatronics focused companies. Software, I'm not seeing any challenges really for women to enter it. But that again, now as the EV transition happens, there'll be more opportunities there.
Do you think the government can play a role here in bringing more women or encouraging more women to participate in the industry?
In my opinion, I don't think it's so much down to the government versus the private sector to actually take the steps to enhance hiring. And again, as I said, I refer back to, this is not a new problem. Many companies have successfully in other sectors addressed this, but it's through a lot of HR mechanisms, attitudinal change, etc., that this can be enhanced.
Perfect. What is Viveka Bhandari's leadership style?
That's a good question. So I'm somebody who, as a leader, is very result-oriented. This might be the wrong word, but very aggressive in getting those results delivered. I'm not an engineer, and I joined the auto industry. I'm a big believer in setting up proper systems and processes, consistently reviewing, consistently thinking about the future and how you can place your company into the best position to compete. My father's always told me that it's the paranoid who survive. And that's very much my motto as, a leader. And also I believe as a leader, you have to inspire people, you have to bring people together. You don't have to be the best. You actually have to be able to bring together the best to deliver results and inspire them to deliver those results. And you also have to lead by example. So for me, the motto has always been you have to be as invested and as committed as you want your juniors to be or your reportees to be. So as a leader, I am a person who never switches off a job. That can be healthy or unhealthy, but I feel that is to always be switched on, to always be thinking, to be result oriented is what defines my leadership style and has helped me deliver results.
Perfect. Viveka, any message for the women out there looking to venture into the automobile industry? What would you tell them?
So I would tell them it is a very challenging industry, but it is also one that's very fulfilling. The fulfillment you get out of hardcore operations, I think, is a fulfillment that many other industries will not give you. But it is also an industry where there still is a glass ceiling for women to break, and you do have to go into it aware of that, and you do have to go into it aware that there are a certain number of biases. And I've always believed that, look, as a woman, if you want to succeed, you also have to be as tough as the next man there. And that might not be the most politically right answer, but that is my motto, and that would be my advice. That come in knowing there will be biases, coming in also believing that there's a reason you're in this job, and there's a reason you can deliver as good as that man next to you, if not better, actually, to be honest. So that would be my advice.
Perfect. Viveka, thanks a lot for talking to us.
You're welcome.